On August 29, 2021, Houston, Texas became the epicenter of a tragedy that shook the community and sparked debates about safety in the digital age. That day, Mark Gagnier, a loving father who had just returned from a fishing trip, received a call that immediately raised alarms. His daughter, Janae Gagnier, hadn't responded to messages or calls for days. Though he tried to stay calm, his concern led him to make a crucial decision: drive to his daughter's apartment to check on her. Have you ever found yourself teetering between concern and fear, unable to ignore your instincts? When Mark arrived at the apartment complex, everything appeared calm. Janae's car was parked in its usual spot, but there was no sign of life. He knocked on the door repeatedly, calling out her name, but the silence was deafening. In that moment, he made a decision that would forever change his life. He broke down the door. This act of desperation led him straight into a chilling scene. What would you do if you were convinced that a loved one was in danger, but had no clear proof? Inside, at the bottom of the stairs, Mark found his daughter's body. She was partially undressed, one leg bent unnaturally beneath her, in a position that spoke of a violent struggle. Her pale skin and visible marks around her neck confirmed the worst. She had been murdered. Overwhelmed by pain and disbelief, Mark soon discovered something even more horrifying. On the second floor, a man lay dying, covered in self-inflicted wounds with a knife embedded in his chest. The walls were covered in messages scrawled with lipstick and marker, as if the assailant had attempted a final confession. What story do these details tell about the perpetrator's disturbed mind? The presence of Kevin Alexander Accordo, a man who had traveled over 2,000 kilometers from Florida, added complexity to the case. What drove him to violently intrude on Janae's life? Investigators found clues in the messages he left, expressions of guilt, obsession, and frustration. One read, "Janae made me believe she cared about me, but she was wearing another man's ring." This reveals a disconnection from reality, often seen in cases of obsession fueled by social media. How can we protect ourselves from such dynamics in a hyperconnected world? Reconstructing the events revealed that Kevin had stayed in the apartment for days before being discovered. This raised crucial questions. How did he bypass security in such a monitored complex? How did he obtain Janae's exact address? Investigators suggested he may have been one of her OnlyFans subscribers, highlighting the latent dangers of interacting with strangers on digital platforms. Reflect on this. Do we truly know how much information we share with strangers? Small changes, like avoiding precise location disclosures or keeping certain aspects of life private, can prevent unnecessary risks. The discovery of the bodies marked the beginning of a harrowing investigation, but it also left an irreplaceable void in the Gagnier family's life. Mark, who had initially hoped to find a tragic accident, now faced the reality that his daughter had been brutally murdered in her own home. This case reminds us of the importance of vigilance and the need to question even the smallest details that seem out of place. How often do we ignore signals because they seem insignificant? The key may lie in the overlooked details. Janae Gagnier's case exposes not only the horrors of violent crime, but also invites reflection on the impact of online exposure and the double-edged nature of social media. How can we balance the desire to share with the need for protection? While this dilemma has no simple answer, it begins with being aware of boundaries and taking steps to safeguard privacy. Today, more than ever, staying alert is not just an option, it's a necessity. As Mark crossed the threshold of his daughter's apartment, he hoped to find her asleep, perhaps unaware of his calls and knocks. Instead, he was met with an image that would haunt him forever. At the foot of the stairs lay Janae, his 33-year-old daughter, motionless. Her partially undressed body, positioned in a way that suggested a desperate struggle, bore clear signs of violence. The marks on her neck told a chilling story. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. How could someone so full of life meet such a tragic end? Janae's apartment, once a sanctuary of peace and safety, now exuded a haunting atmosphere of violence and despair. The blood-stained walls and erratic traces of movement painted a grim narrative of the events that had unfolded. On the second floor, Mark and his girlfriend made an even more horrifying discovery. A man they didn't recognize lay dying, surrounded by chaos. Messages scrawled in lipstick and marker on the walls revealed his tormented state of mind. Some expressed guilt, while others conveyed a dangerous obsession. This was no random crime, it was something far darker. How could one begin to make sense of such a scene? The man, later identified as Kevin Alexander Accordo, had inflicted severe injuries on himself, including a knife wound to his chest. His presence raised numerous questions. Who was he? How had he come into Janae's life? His failing state prevented immediate answers, but the cryptic messages left behind hinted at a twisted narrative of obsession and delusion. Phrases like, "I should never have left Florida," and "Janae deceived me with another man," revealed a deeply disturbed psyche. These details offered investigators a glimpse into his motivations, but added layers of complexity to an already perplexing case. The initial impact on Janae's family was devastating. Mark, who had entered the apartment clinging to hope, now found himself holding the lifeless body of his daughter. His mind raced to comprehend the scene. Was this an accident? Why were there signs of a struggle and blood on the walls? As he attempted to cover Janae's body with a blanket, his girlfriend's screams from the second floor confirmed that this was not merely a tragic accident but a sinister crime. That moment marked the beginning of an emotional collapse for a family grappling with the unimaginable. For the investigators who arrived shortly after, the scene was a puzzle and a nightmare. The apartment became a crime lab as they meticulously collected evidence. Blood samples, fingerprints, security footage, and the chilling messages on the walls. One question loomed large. How had Kevin Accordo bypassed the stringent security measures at Janae's apartment complex? This initial mystery added another layer of intrigue to an already unsettling case. Have you ever encountered a situation where the pieces simply don't fit, leaving you searching for the missing link? That's exactly what investigators faced as they delved into this tragedy. The shock of Janae Gagnier's murder quickly spread beyond her apartment's walls. Known to her followers as Miss Mercedes Moore, Janae had built a significant presence as an influencer with over 2.6 million Instagram followers. News of her death went viral, with theories and speculation flooding social media. Some suggested a robbery gone wrong, while others posited more far-fetched ideas. For the Gagnier family, however, the public discourse was irrelevant compared to the immense loss they felt. Janae's murder was not just an emotional blow. It was a stark reminder of the vulnerability that even fame and influence cannot protect against. As investigators pieced together the case, disturbing details emerged. Kevin Accordo had reportedly traveled over 2,000 kilometers from Florida to Houston, driven by an obsession with Janae. His connection to her appeared to stem from social media, where Janae had built her brand as an influencer. Platforms like Instagram and OnlyFans had allowed her to connect with millions, but they also exposed her to individuals with darker intentions. Accordo's actions underscored the risks of online interactions, particularly for those in the public eye. How much do we truly know about those who follow us online? How can we safeguard against the dangers of oversharing in a digital world? The tragedy of Janae Gagnier serves as a sobering reminder of the double-edged sword of social media. While these platforms offer opportunities for connection and success, they also open the door to potential harm. Balancing visibility with privacy is a challenge that influencers like Janae must navigate, often at great personal risk. This case compels us to question: are we doing enough to protect ourselves and others in an increasingly connected yet perilous online landscape? Janae Gagnier's life was a delicate balance between her public persona and her private self. While Mercedes Moore shone as a charismatic and provocative figure at events and on digital platforms, Janae remained at her core, a reserved woman who cherished the quiet moments spent with her family. She enjoyed simple pleasures like watching movies with her parents or discussing her personal projects. This duality wasn't just a professional strategy. It was her way of maintaining equilibrium in a world that could be as demanding as it was superficial. How do you navigate the boundaries between what you share with the world and what you keep for yourself? Despite her success, Janae wasn't immune to the challenges her lifestyle brought. Many of her personal relationships were strained by stereotypes and prejudices tied to her career. Romantic partners, friends, and even strangers online often questioned her path, forcing her to constantly defend her choices. Yet, instead of being discouraged, she used these criticisms as fuel to keep moving forward, staying focused on her goals. Have you ever faced criticism for the decisions you've made? How did you handle it? Janae Gagnier's story is a reminder of how complex it can be to balance personal aspirations with external expectations. Her life was marked by success, sacrifice, and the constant struggle to remain true to herself. Her journey encourages reflection on how dreams, no matter how unconventional, deserve respect and validation. How committed are you to your own dreams, even when the world struggles to understand them? Her example inspires us to pursue our goals with determination, while learning to navigate the inevitable challenges along the way. Kevin Alexander Accordo, at first glance, seemed like an ordinary man with no criminal history to hint at a troubled mind. A native of Wellington, Florida, he lived with his parents and appeared to lead a normal life, except for one crucial detail: his obsessive fixation on Janae Gagnier. Kevin wasn't a stranger to social media. Though his behavior hadn't raised alarms in his immediate surroundings, his connection to Janae emerged through platforms like OnlyFans. This is where his admiration crossed the line into stalking. How vulnerable are we when we interact with strangers online? This case illustrates that the risks aren't always foreseeable. Investigators revealed that Kevin drove over 2,000 kilometers from Florida to Texas, a journey meticulously planned with a single purpose: to get close to Janae. His level of determination showed an obsessive pattern far beyond ordinary fandom. Social media, which had propelled Janae's career, also became the window through which Kevin accessed her personal life. The messages he left scrawled on her apartment walls, like "I should never have left Florida," and "Janae made me believe she cared about me," hinted at a distorted narrative in his mind. How does someone transition from admiration to a desire for absolute control? This phenomenon, while not new, remains deeply unsettling. Reconstructing the events revealed a chilling and puzzling sequence of actions. Kevin entered Janae's apartment without any signs of forced entry, suggesting he may have exploited a lapse in security, like an unlocked door. Another theory posits that he waited for an opportunity to intercept her upon arrival. These details, though seemingly minor, underscore the importance of reinforcing everyday safety habits. Simple precautions, such as avoiding real-time location sharing or enhancing home security, can make a significant difference. What habits could you change to better protect your privacy? The crime occurred between August 27th and 28th, as indicated by the autopsy. Janae's death was caused by mechanical asphyxia due to strangulation, but she also sustained a severe head injury, indicating a struggle to fight for her life. After taking her life, Kevin stayed in the apartment for 2 days, during which he wrote messages on the walls and appeared to ruminate on his actions. Ultimately, he took his own life when he heard someone attempting to enter the apartment. What goes through the mind of someone who reaches this breaking point? The combination of obsession, rejection, and detachment from reality can be catastrophic, not only for the victim but also for the perpetrator. Investigators suggested Kevin may have obtained Janae's address through her OnlyFans account. Fans sometimes sent physical gifts to creators, which required providing an address. Although this is speculative, it highlights a troubling reality: how easily personal information can be traced in a digital environment. Did you know that seemingly harmless details, like a P.O. box or frequently visited locations, can provide clues to those with malicious intentions? Reflecting on what we share online is a vital step toward self-protection. Kevin's motives were rooted in a toxic obsession fueled by a distorted fantasy. When Janae announced her engagement in May of that year, Kevin's illusion of a special connection with her was shattered. What seemed trivial to most triggered an extreme reaction in him. Kevin didn't see Janae as an independent individual, but as an extension of his own fantasies. This behavior, known as erotomania, is more common than we realize and can have devastating consequences. How often do we idealize someone without truly knowing their story or context? This case reminds us of the importance of separating reality from our own projections. Janae's murder not only devastated her family, but also sent shockwaves through social media, becoming a stark example of the dangers of digital exposure. As news of her death spread, platforms were filled with condolences and harsh criticism of the victim. This contrast exposed an uncomfortable truth. In the age of hyperconnectivity, people feel entitled not only to opinions but also to judgment, even in the face of tragedy. What does this say about the impact of social media on our empathy and perception of others? A similar case, that of Alexis Sharkey, unfolded months earlier in Texas. Alexis, another influencer, was also found dead, strangled. Like Janae, her public life became a focus of attention and speculation after her death. Both cases highlight how social media, while offering unique opportunities for connection and expression, can also be fertile ground for obsession, harassment, and violence. How often have we seen the boundaries between the virtual and real worlds dangerously blur? Online exposure raises critical questions about safety and privacy. Where do we draw the line between what we share and what we keep private? Janae sought to protect her personal life by using an alias and limiting certain aspects of her identity. Yet, these precautions weren't enough to prevent someone like Kevin from crossing every boundary. Regularly reviewing privacy settings, avoiding real-time location sharing, and being mindful of what we post can make a significant difference. What measures do you take to protect your digital life? Public reactions to Janae's murder revealed the dual nature of social media. While thousands expressed their outrage and solidarity with the Gagnier family, many used the anonymity of these platforms to blame Janae for her own death, criticizing her career choices. These comments not only lack sensitivity, but also perpetuate a cycle of victim blaming. What does this say about our ability as a society to handle tragedy with compassion? What would you do if you or someone close to you were under similar scrutiny? For Janae's family, the pain was immeasurable. Beyond coping with her loss, they had to endure public judgment. Her parents, Mark and Janae, chose to speak out to honor her memory, emphasizing the person Janae was beyond her public persona. They organized vigils and spoke to the media, not only to celebrate her life, but also to shed light on the dangers of social media. How can we find strength amid such profound pain? For the Gagnier family, preserving Janae's legacy became a way to transform their tragedy into a warning for others. Janae Gagnier's case ignited a broader conversation about the boundaries between the real and the virtual. Is it fair for users to feel entitled to invade the privacy of content creators simply because they share aspects of their lives? This question is relevant to everyone, not just public figures. Building clear boundaries and strengthening digital security are essential steps to prevent the virtual from consuming the personal. Are we truly prepared to navigate the digital world without losing our humanity? Ultimately, Janae's story urges us to reflect on the balance between visibility and vulnerability online. Social media isn't inherently dangerous, but its misuse can turn it into a weapon against us. Learning to use it consciously, being selective about what we share and how we interact, may be the key to staying safe. What changes can you make today to protect your well-being in the digital world? Janae's tragedy reminds us that safety and privacy aren't luxuries, but necessities in the modern era. The case of Janae Gagnier is a tragedy that not only devastated a family, but also sent a global alarm about the dangers of online exposure. Her life, filled with ambition, dreams, and success, was abruptly cut short by a toxic obsession fueled in the digital realm. From her determined childhood to her rise as the influencer known as Miss Mercedes Moore, Janae lived a life that balanced her public and private personas. Yet this balance was shattered by someone unable to distinguish reality from fantasy. What does this teach us about the risks of oversharing online? One key lesson from this case is the importance of setting clear boundaries between our personal lives and what we display in the virtual world. Social media offers a powerful platform to connect, create, and thrive, but it's also a mirror that can distort our reality. People like Janae, who sought to build a career while sharing fragments of their lives, often face judgment and danger as a result of public exposure. This raises the question: how much control do we really have over what we share? Striking a balance between digital safety and exposure is challenging but essential. Regularly reviewing privacy settings, limiting personal information shared online, and understanding the implications of each post are fundamental steps to protecting ourselves. For example, avoiding real-time location tags or sharing daily routines can significantly reduce the risk of stalking or violence. How many of us take these precautions regularly? It often takes a tragedy like this to realize their importance. Janae's case also highlights the power of social media to shape public perception. After her death, the conversation extended beyond safety to include prejudices and stigmas against public figures. Many pointed to her career choices as factors in her demise, ignoring her humanity and her right to live in peace. This reflects a widespread lack of empathy that is amplified by digital anonymity. Are we sufficiently aware of the impact our words and judgments can have on others? In addition to reflecting on digital exposure, this case challenges us to examine how social media shapes our relationships. How real are the connections we form online? Kevin Alexander Accordo's obsession with Janae demonstrates how distorted perceptions can lead to tragedy. Learning to set boundaries, both personal and digital, is key to preventing the virtual world from encroaching on our emotional well-being. Are we prioritizing our mental health and safety in an increasingly connected world? As we navigate a constantly evolving digital landscape, we must become more proactive about our protection. This involves not only educating ourselves about risks, but also teaching others, especially younger generations, how to move cautiously in the online environment. Privacy, though increasingly challenged by technology, remains a right we must defend. What steps can we take today to ensure our digital lives don't compromise our safety or peace of mind? Janae Gagnier's case leaves us with a vital question: how much are we willing to let social media influence our lives? Finding a balance between leveraging its benefits and protecting ourselves from its dangers is not just an option, it's a necessity. Reflecting on what we share, how we interact, and the boundaries we set is crucial in a world where connection is instantaneous but consequences can be permanent. Now more than ever, it's important to remember that behind every post is a real life, with dreams, struggles, and, above all, the right to live safely and with dignity.